days ago, the National Assembly passed President Bola Tinubu's budget of renewed hope, raising it from 27.5 trillion naira presented by him on November the 29th, 2023 to 28.7 trillion naira, an increase of over 1.2 trillion naira. The exchange rate was increased from 750 naira to 800 naira per dollar, and the 1.78 million barrels per day daily oil production, $77.96 oil benchmark price, and GDP growth rate of 3.88% were approved. This will be President Bola Tinubu's first budget as president and has a non-debt recurrent expenditure of 8.77 trillion naira, a debt service projected to be 8.27 trillion naira, and a capital expenditure of 9.99 trillion naira. The National Assembly raised its 2024 budgetary allocation by 74.23% to 344.85 billion naira, the highest ever budgetary allocation to the National Assembly, whose initial allocation in 2024 budget, as proposed, was pegged at 197.93 billion naira. This increase in allocation to the Senate and the House of Representatives is happening smack in the middle of a cost of living crisis in the country, with the government telling citizens over and over again that the country is facing tough times. As eyebrows are being raised across the country, Nigerians ask, tough times for who? And now that I'm squinting at this belt you're wearing, it seems like you're telling me to tighten my belt while you loosen yours. Because I'm being honest, your belt is looking rather loose, sir. Also, what does all this mean? And how does this affect my account balance as a Nigerian? Will I be able to afford at least my basic amenities this year, after a troubling 2023 that saw a decline in the quality of life of more than half of Nigeria's population? Hello and welcome to Political Paradigm right here on Channels Television. I am Kayla Megwa. My guest on the program is a renowned economist, Paul Alaje. He's a senior economist with SPM Professionals, a fellow of the International Management Consultants Board of the United States of America. He's also a fellow of the Institute of Economists here in Nigeria, entrepreneur, economic analyst, financial and economic development consultant. Welcome to Political Paradigm, Mr. Paul Alaje. It's good to see you again.
Thank you so much for having me.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you.
So let's talk a bit about this budget of renewed hope. At the time when it first came out, I want to be able to get your thoughts as an economist. What's proposed and what was eventually assented to. Is this the budget to get Nigerians out of the situation that they had to deal with in 2023?
Thank you once again for having me. I'll tell you that I've seen the budget in Naira terms. It appears humongous. It appears really huge. But in dollar terms, we are still doing less than $40 billion. Meanwhile, as a country, what we should be doing is not less than $100 billion. The question is, where will we get the money from? We have not even been able to do half of that. We've not been able to do 40% of what a nation of our size requires. This budget is, at best, if you use exchange rate that government is now proposing, or which government eventually signed at $800 as their official exchange rate, you see that we are doing far less, we are doing less than $40 billion. So how can 40%, lower than 40% of our expected expenditure take us out of economic quagmire? The answer is no. The budget was presented by Mr. President.
So no, just so we're clear, no, this is not the budget to do it.
No, it's not. It's not. But this is the budget. In fact, if you look at the details of the budget, it's more recurrent in nature. The budget that will liberate Nigeria and take us out of economic quagmire, one, would be inching towards the required amount to be spent, which is not less than $100 billion a year. That is, even if you don't have up to $100 billion a year, we'll be seeing something more than $50 billion a year. What does that mean? For a budget like this, you will see more will be voted to capital expenditure. Capital expenditure in this budget is 35%. Recurrent expenditure, even though government in the last 9 years have started using the strategy of debts, recurrent and non-debt recurrent. They are all recurrent expenditure. So you have just recurrent expenditure. So you have about 65% recurrent expenditure.
I thought it meant something different.
No, it's recurrent expenditure because it's not in capital. What economic literature teaches is if it's not capital, it goes into recurrent. So are you investing it on capital expenditure or are you putting some in, even in human capital if you want to count that for Human Development Index? But we have huge size for recurrent expenditure. You can look at states over the years, states that have voted, and I mean subnationals, that have voted more to capital and states that have hopelessly depend on voting on recurrent expenditure. The result is there. Which one is building more roads? Which one is building rail? Which one is building more hospitals? Which one is building more schools? Which one is doing more? The more you do for your people, the better they become in terms of infrastructure, power, rail, hospitals, schools, and so on and so forth.
Wait, just so we can go back a little bit. So all the belts that we tightened in 2023, things were hard. Everything was just exponentially expensive. And we were told, oh, the good times will come. You're saying that's not going to happen?
Well, good times will come.
Is it going to happen in 2024?
Well, as economists, professionally, we are bound, as sworn to an oath, not to give people fake
false
hope. When you look at what exchange rate is and the fact that what people's income is today, I don't know if your income is increasing at par with inflation at over 28%. Even inflation, this budget assumes inflation will reduce to 21%. That appears a bit not certain. Even though we may see, I am hopeful that by April, May, there will be a reduction in inflation, which will go to about 23, 24%. But to see inflation come down sporadically, meanwhile, globally, pump price across the world increased this January. Nigeria cannot be an exemption. If we say we have allowed forces of demand and supply to adjudicate price, how do we say that we still want to sell PMS at the same rate? That is why, in this station, I warn vehemently, don't remove subsidy if your refineries are not working. I know there are some persons that have said there will be no difference. There certainly will be different. One is that the pressure on exchange rates. I said if you must remove subsidy, make sure refinery works or you ensure your exchange rate will not be devalued. When Mr. President announced subsidy is gone, exchange rate officially it was 400. Today, according to this budget, is 800. When you look at import-export window, export and import window, as of today, it exchanged for over 1,000. As of today, official rate, while parallel market is saying 1,200. If you look at, what's it called now? Spot rate that is traded. It's traded over 1,000 naira. So if government is even saying it's 800, it means even lower. Then if you check our consumption pattern, economics says you can spend any money in 4 ways. Number one, marginal propensity to consume. That is, any money you get, you are going to spend it on local consumption. Number two, marginal propensity to save. What proportion of that income are you going to save? Number three, marginal rate of taxation. What proportion of that income are you going to spend on taxation? Number four, which seems to be the largest, marginal propensity to import. Let's ask today, from those that are viewing us now, those that will view us in future, the phone, maybe they are watching on the internet, even access to internet, is it imported or have been domesticated? Their television, is it imported? That TV, is it imported or it is made in Nigeria? And if their name is Tokumbo, maybe they are also imported. That is why over 80% of our economic life, I didn't say so, the National Bureau of Statistics and agency of government that look at our import pattern, importing unfinished products. And when you check it from our cream to some of the things we consume, our clothes, we cannot be walking around naked. Our shoes, even our furnitures, even tomatoes sometimes. Food, as much as we have a lot of elders in Nigeria, we still import cows. We still eat foreign meat. So fish, highest fish, we still consume them. Chicken, we still import them. So it now gives a lot of headache to hear that a former minister revealed at the floor of National Assembly that passed this budget that we are still importing toothpick. So what do you now make for saying that such economy should be devaluing our currency? If you devalue your currency, you see, there is a popular saying which I've mentioned time and again, that if you want to destroy people, don't carry guns and bazooka. The first thing you do is to devalue the currency. Definitely they will come down. Because already, if you are exporting 1 sheet of paper for 1 pen. In Nigeria, we produce sheet of paper, we have competitive cost advantage, and we were using that to buy equivalent of 1 pen from America. Now, when you devalue Naira by 50%, that means you need to bring 2 sheets of paper. But you give the same workload to produce the 2 sheets of paper. But guess what? An American is still doing the same work. So it can now buy you cheaper. The intention of classical economy, which is the limitation of classical economies, is that when you do that, you will force Nigeria to consume made in Nigeria. Let me ask you, where are we producing our own in Nigeria? Wristwatches, which we want to use, work clock, because some people say wristwatch is luxury. What about clock in your homes? Is it also a luxury? Where are we producing our clothes? I'm going to get quite a number of things.
I'm going to get to you and your push for manufacturing, because I've heard you so many times, especially when the new finance minister when the new finance minister assumed office. I remember you talking about how he has to steer things towards manufacturing. In fact, I have a quote from you on that, but I'm going to get to that in a bit. I want us to be able to explain this budget in layman's terms to the Nigerian. At least a few things that you said right now, which are worrying, are actually straightforward. So let's start with what this means for the Nigerian, right? So the increase, they actually talked about particular, places where this increase was made. They talked about statutory allocations, National Judicial Council, Niger Delta Commission, and a lot of these places. Explain to me why this increase was necessary, at least from their point of view. What were they thinking when they increased these particular areas?
What I heard from both the National Assembly and the Senate, one is that the commodity prices have changed. So they cannot spend with the old rates. Because
they changed between November and
Yes.
And
so in the
January.
real sense, is it really November? Because when that budget was prepared, it was before November.
It was before November.
So it's possible they were looking at a period around June to December. Since they have opportunity to change at the National Assembly, they could go to National Assembly and change. And I think that's exactly what happened because of price variation. But my question to that is, what happens to the remaining 220 million Nigerians? How will they make provision for the difference? One thing we must get correctly is that we say that our judicial system is weak. But if you don't vote enough resources and make them independent within what is realistic today and what is competitive around the world, I don't know how we are going to have strong judiciary as well as the police.
So it justified increase in that
sense.
Yes,
for the judiciary. Okay. Not for legislature.
Yes,
I don't
because
know.
that is where I'm coming to.
No, I really don't know why. A couple of months back, we heard that 160 million naira was spent to buy vehicles, for legislature. If you check what they bought vehicle 4 years ago, it will be different because of exchange rate. Can the legislature pass a law that for them to use vehicles, which I think is important, because if you ask me, I would suggest that they use buses, if you ask me. But these buses should come from Nigeria. If you say you want to go on a committee follow-up of what people are doing, constituency responsibility, which they perform, and it's very important they perform, and check on what ministry and predecessors of government are doing. It should not be in luxurious vehicles.
I was going to say that the last African president I know who decided to use buses to carry his cabinet, and of course many lawmakers. The last president who tried it was Thomas Sankara, and he was killed for doing that. He did not get any favors by doing that.
The question is, when will Africa be liberated? By depending hopelessly on the demand or outputs coming from other parts of the world. We will speak our development for a long time with our mouth, but we may never witness it until we understand that comparative cost advantage is not just economic theory. It is when you know that you have to go through pain. For years, China practiced partial autarky. After they have gotten their development and their desire and change of orientation of their people, they were poor, yes. But when they opened, the people were already comfortable to produce, and they can now sell to the rest of the world, and they can buy fuel to the rest of the world. Today, if you check most of the projects in some parts of Africa, China have major presence. The question is, where else does Nigeria have investment? Apart from investments in Nigeria, we are looking for foreign investors. But who are we investors to as a country? Who are we investing in so that when Naira got devalued, we should be celebrating, because some people should be taking the money as a result proceeds of their investment into Nigeria. And the central bank should not worry at all. But we have looked just inward. And in this inward looking, we have not been able to even invest directly into some of the things we're doing as a nation.
Let's take a look at some of the sectors where the money was the money was sent to. Defense and security sector, of course, usually has the bulk of our budget. What do you make of that?
Well, for me, I think there is no amount of money we put in defense. When you look at defense, I think, to me, I would want to give it number 2, because the Ministry of Finance took number 1, debt servicing. Debt servicing is humongous.
Well, debt servicing is a topic on it. So.
It's a topic on it. And that is through the Ministry of Finance. After that, defense is the most important. See, finance is economy. Security, Ministry of Defense is security. They are twins. You cannot separate them. Any economy or government that try to separate the two will commit murder. And that is why when we say we want to solve economy alone without security, we are murdering people. We must solve the two together. So the amount voted for it is good. But the question is, can we now start having performance measurement of what we have given to this defense over time, such that we can now start seeing results? 2, as a people, beyond financial deposit of funds, can we also start improving our belief in the military and in our policing system? Especially this is defense, so it's purely the military. And also encourage them to do more. And we also need to get to a point where we can say, this is what we have voted for capital. I have the figure for capital for the defense ministry. But beyond what we have given to that, can we ensure that we are winning this war and convince our people that we are winning this war as a result of what we give? Because if you remove debt service, this ministry or this agency have been the one that have been getting the highest vote of our budget, at least in the last 10 years and beyond, from what I remember. And the reasons are obvious, because we are fighting insecurity in some parts of our country. And I think that, yes, it's important we vote to them, but this voting to them should also give us an improvement. And that does not mean the military have not achieved any result. If I say that, I will not be fair on them. Because before now, we knew what happened in Abuja. We have heard about Banex, we have heard about, and we have also seen spots of kidnapping that have even spread all around the country. I'm not saying it has stopped, but I'm saying that some areas we have seen some level of reduction. But we have also seen major escalation in some part like Jos, which seems to be very frequent. In Taraba, which seems to be very frequent. Kaduna seems to be very frequent, But how can we now consolidate on what we have and make sure that we take those who don't mean well for our country out of the way, and we can truly say that our country will get to the place of development and growth.
And for Nigerians to be able to believe that the money was used properly. Education.
Well, education, if you look at the percentage of what is voted to education, is abysmally low. I was expecting nothing less than 15-20% to get to education. We are doing less than 1/3. And as a serious economy that should be taken seriously, the president said something, because I listened to him very carefully when he was first presentation he made 1st of January and when he was signing the budget. I must also say that in the recent history, he's the first president to sign a budget on the 1st of January, and that is really commendable that he signed the budget 1st of January. But look at it. How do we say that we are developing human? Because the president said his goal is Human Development Index, to grow human. And there are 3 factors in human development. What is happening to income? People are getting poorer. What is happening to education? We need to do 20%. We are doing around 5%. That is poor, about 25% of what we should be doing. The next is health. What we are doing in health is also very low. We should be doing 15% and not just for federal government, with the entire federation. So the president should speak to members of his cabinet and beyond, and I mean Federal Executive Council now, such that there can be a deliberate action in 2025 budget, such that government can vote more to education, more to health, and most importantly, in infrastructure.
Infrastructure as well was going to for this 2024 budget. You had touched on it earlier, but there are 2 areas left: infrastructure and social development and poverty. These are some of the, especially the social development area. What do you make of how it's being run and how much is being allocated to these particular sectors, infrastructure and social development?
Well,
and
I'll
poverty?
speak first on social development. I have a lot of worries. I remember when President Buhari was in office, I spoke vehemently against just social development for doing its sake. I also understand I may not be the fault of President Buhari, and it may not also be the fault of President Tinubu, and I will explain to you. Some international organizations say that they are returning monies to Nigeria, our money, but they are giving us condition on how we must spend it. I don't think that is fair on us. Because if these are looted funds, as it is called, then government should use it to build monuments for us to remember somebody stole the money. Now, this is what government have used it to do. But in some cases, we hear that the money must be shared. Show me one impact on all the 5,000 naira we have shared every month and all the 10,000 naira we have shared every month. Somebody said, let's take all the monies and share it. The truth is that in a matter of time, those with wisdom, knowledge, and understanding, we have the money, and those without, they will become without. They will have nothing to show for it. After a matter of a year, you will see the conspicuous difference. And I cannot guarantee that inflation will not go up. So I also know that there are some international lending organizations that are forceful as to this is how you must spend the money given to you. I want to believe that Nigerian authority will resist this in the coming period for people to give us hundreds of millions of dollars and also tell us at the same time how we must spend it. Their fears could be that over the years, maybe they have perceived Nigeria as a corrupt country. But for God's sake, if our authorities are saying this is the way they want the money to be spent for the development, I think anyone around the world that loves Nigeria should be particularly about capital right now. We need $100 million, $100 billion.
But the ambiguity around social investment programs and stuff like that has been a cause of worry for many Nigerians. We're seeing a lot of embarrassing stories in the news right now.
In recent time regarding how the money has been spent.
So even if it is being used for social investment, how do we ensure accountability and transparency?
Well, it has to be purely digital.
It's always shrouded in so much mystery.
It has to be purely digital. I remember,
it has to go digital.
Where people
can't be sharing money.
No, people stack money on table as though they are doing, is it a banza of some sort, a bazaar of some sort, and people will come and hand it over to them and ask them to sign. You can do 10 and go behind the corner and sign 100. How do you even defend to the anti-graft agency that the money was disbursed? How many of those people, quote and unquote, will you look for? Or is it going to the market and people taking pictures with some personality and giving them cash by hand? It's going to be very embarrassing. I've not seen any other serious country that we want to be like, like China, like America, like Germany, that will line their people up or put them under the canopy and start giving them 5,000, 10,000 naira, especially when it's close to election. I don't think that in the real sense, we want to help the people. If we want to help the people, we should not sustain them in poverty. We should build enterprises, come up with programs that can liberate these people. It could also be training. Look at Sesame Seed, one of the most vital Sesame Seed, I beg your pardon, one of the most important outputs that Nigeria exports. When after crude, it's among the top, it's number 1 or top 2 that Nigeria exports. How many can we mill it in Nigeria?
We don't mill sesame seeds.
The oil, can we process it? We have to export raw.
What's the problem really with sesame seeds? Because I've been to that market in Kano, because there's a lot of milling that goes on in northern Nigeria. So I remember thinking, because the sesame seeds, there are these bags that are up to the ceiling, and then they are in grades. But they do have machines that clean them up. So there are different grades for standardization.
But where is the money?
When it comes to the oil,
where is the money?
You have to export it to be able for us to now import sesame oil.
Is the money with wheat or with bread? Is the money with cotton or with clothing? So what we do, we export raw material with the jobs, with the wealth, and we take peanuts.
And then we buy the finished product.
So if we say that these are poorest of the poor, and government said they're in the rural area, what can they do in that rural area? If you can use that money to provide electricity for them in rural area, don't worry, their children will become barbers, they will become hairdressers, they will become tailors in the rural area. And you now have rural electrification program and so on and so forth. That means money stolen or money that we have borrowed is for these reasons. And I think that is what government should be doing in the coming
As you mentioned borrowed, let's segue into debt servicing, which is the biggest part of this budget. As an economist, what do you make of that? Well,
borrowing is Nigeria. People have said, I need to be fair on all areas of arguments that countries must borrow. Well, I agree partially, but the question is on what? But at what point is it enough to stop borrowing? That's another argument, because people are saying you can keep borrowing. America has borrowed all through. Sometimes we even need to borrow our way out of recession. I've heard those arguments. There are 3 robust arguments economists have provided. The first is sufficient, the first is necessary, sufficient, and reason. The first one is this. When you compare what your debt to GDP is saying, remember, it's necessary but not sufficient. For Nigeria, it's less than 50%. So it means that should give us reasons to borrow more. But that is not sufficient, because when you borrow money, you don't use your statement, your balance sheet to pay. You use cash received to pay and your ability to pay. Here is it. If we use that, now we need to check our revenue debt service to revenue, not my word. The incumbent Minister of Finance, about 5 weeks, 6 weeks ago, said Nigeria spent 98% of revenue to service debt. Is it not insane for us to say we should continue in the same pattern? And that is why last year, 2023, first quarter, I predicted that by 2025 December, that's Q4, Nigeria may need to borrow to service debt. What does that mean? There will be no funds again. All the money we will use to service, even to service, not for recurrent, not for capital, but to service debt, which is the most important thing here, we may have to borrow to do that.
It scares me whenever you make predictions, because every time since I've known you, every time you make a prediction, it comes true. So it always scares me when you make predictions like that. But you're saying with what we have on ground right now, we are still heading in that direction.
We are heading in that direction. In spite of subsidy removal, in spite of what's it called now? Exchange rate, naira devaluation. Look at it. Some states are celebrating, which is fine, because President Tinubu have actually liberated states. He's taking the whole blame, but people are benefiting, especially some nationals. When he removes subsidy, he's not taking the money alone to federal government. A lot of that money is going to states. I saw states have almost their revenue multiply. What they did not check is that in economics, you cannot clap with one hand. You need both hands. Their debt profile has also increased. Especially states that are owing in hard currency. And unfortunately, most states are owing in hard currency. There is a state that we said is so distressed, is in Southwest. That state is owing only $99 million. I will not give you the name of the state. Now, when you converted what the state should pay back at 400, it was a big distress to the state with what they are owing locally. But now that the state is now still owing $99 million, but now at 800 naira, then you know that the state, in spite of the humongous amount they've generated, the state is in a big mess. And I hope that they will deliver them someday.
So let's move on now. My goodness. Whenever we talk about Nigeria's economy, it's always really depressing. But we do have to educate people on it, so we must keep going. The status quo of our country, you have stated categorically that this is not the budget that is going to improve it. I want to be able to talk to you about your drive towards manufacturing, your call. I want to be able to quote you, was at a lecture in Lagos. So you said, when you look at our import pattern as published from time to time by the National Bureau of Statistics, over 90% of all imports have manufacturing inputs. We import petrol, for example. We have a manufacturing issue. This is the same for processed foods or anything we import the most. If the government will pay important attention to manufacturers and listen to them, then they have solved at least 40 to 50% of our economic challenges. What should have been done differently with this budget?
Well, manufacturing should have taken a major attention of government. If you want to lift Nigerians out of poverty, look at the numbers. 70% of the population are young people. And these young people, they roam around the street. Even though Bureau of Statistics adjusted the parameter for measuring unemployment, or included 1 hour a week. If you go back to the traditional method of 40 hours a week, people that cannot get job for 8 hours, or those that cannot get job for 20 hours, we have nearly 40% of our population out of employment, or at best, youth unemployment. How do you engage them? Brazil has almost similar population. What are they known for? Brazil is focusing on manufacturing. India, arguably the largest population now, just now, because recent time they overtook China in terms of population. What is India? What is President Modi focusing on? Prime Minister Modi or President Modi, what's he focusing on? Manufacturing. China, what is the leader of China focusing on? Manufacturing. Why should Nigeria be focusing on something else, like agriculture and service? And when you look at the budget, what is this budget focusing on? The larger proportion of this budget, like I'm not the one that prepared it, is saying our focus will be to service. The next will be to attend to security challenges. If you take it sector by sector, what proportion of these is going to help us to build more roads for infrastructure, to connect our farms to industry?
Some may say we have to service the debt that we incurred trying to build infrastructure.
I agree that we have to service the debt that we have used to care infrastructure. I was telling you how economists advise and what they did not advise. The third point of that point is that what has happened? What happened when you borrow money? What proportion of that money? What is the rate of growth of debt? Compare that with the rate of growth of the economy, and you should not have less than 30% impact. Here is it. Debt has grown in the last 10 years by over, on the average per annum, 25%.
I mean, it has been a cause of worry for Nigerians. This debt issue, is there some kind of common ground we can come to? Because everyone is up in arms about our debt. And the idea that the bulk of our budget is being used to service the debt is actually divided our citizenry somewhat. Because some people believe, look, we need to be able to get out of this debt. Because the debt, we don't want, there's a common saying, you've been hearing it around, our children will be the ones to pay up this debt.
Obviously.
What do you make of that situation? Was this debt incurred necessary for our growth on some level? Well, was there any good side to it?
We really don't need deep thinking to know anymore. Check what we have borrowed in the last 10 years. Did it contribute to growth? What is our growth in the last 10 years? Did you really grow? Average growth was less than 2%. Debt grew by over 25% on the average per annum. So the money we are borrowing, on what are we spending the monies? On growth induced? Are they growth induced? Look at it again. If we are going to spend over 8 billion naira, 8 trillion naira. We are going to borrow over 8 trillion naira from the budget that we have just seen. And we are going to spend approximately 25% of the budget to service debt. Check what we are spending on infrastructure, about 35 trillion naira. So do we continue to borrow? On what exactly are we borrowing? There is an assumption in all this our conversation that we will meet our revenue target, which we have never been able to meet. President Buhari's revenue target was between 8 to 9 trillion naira. We're able to do 5 trillion naira. We would not have done up to that, but for President Tinubu, that help improve by some policies of FX devaluation and subsidy removal. We will not have been able to do that. But we were able to do that because of the two policies that came on board. What that meant is that we would have even borrowed more. Now, with this devaluation, are we sure we will be able to meet up to 18, 19 trillion naira? I doubt. What does that mean? We may even borrow more. Even though government says we want to raise taxes, which should not be an option. Because if it's an option, then we'll be taxing businesses to out of business. Because economic situation is now very tough for many people and many businesses because people are distressed. So, but tax offices will do their best. We generate more revenue for government, which is applaudable. We'll get more coming from NNPC, immigration and custom. But what happens to the economy generally? Will the economy be better for it? People say Nigeria have low taxes. I don't think so. We can't be paying 30% corporate income tax and we call that low taxes. We pay education tax 2%. If you have that to 30%, you call that low taxes. I don't think so. Check what is paid as personal income tax. The tax rates are high. So when we borrow money, government should have gotten this money. The economy should have grown, because of all of this. But we will keep raising our taxes over time because we want to service the debt. The question is, we have a lot of money borrowed from outside Nigeria. The impact of foreign debt, in an analysis I did with a university in Nigeria, in a report that was submitted, it has over 80% of negative impact. Over 80%. So should we continue to borrow from outside? Look at all the Eurobond we raised. At what rate did we raise them? How much is Euro value today? And how much was the money then? That means if you had borrowed 2 billion euro that time, what we'll be paying today in that time's rate will be 4 billion euro without service. Did you get my point? If you had borrowed 2 euro and exchange rate then was 500, today euro is more than 1,000. So if you keep borrowing from outside, and we are not looking at solution, and that is why government should find alternative. And I think this should be our conversation. How do we find alternative? Through PPP. Either local investors that want to support, speaking with National Sovereign Investment Authority to invest directly on infrastructure. Open up this economy for private sector to partner. Look at several countries that have gotten it correctly on their infrastructure. Government presence. Government alone cannot build all the infrastructure. And infrastructure is so key, so central for growth and development. It's important for us to open up. I've seen the president traveling inviting people to come and invest. But what happens to local investment at home? Investors at home?
We're going to get to investments in a bit, but I wanted to talk a bit about something that a lot of people have been worried about: the closure of many companies, well, scaling back and closure of many companies. In fact, I think one of the worst that one. I don't know if it's good or bad, because sometimes I feel like when these foreign businesses close, it to force us to start to grow our own businesses. We saw GlaxoSmithKline, Procter & Gamble. This exodus was profound, and it signaled the profound impact of these economic hardships that we're facing, and how it's affected even companies that we considered really large businesses. What do you make of the closure of these businesses? There's so many of them, really. but what do you make of that closure? Is it going to force us? Because at the back of my mind, it's going to force us to start producing.
Provided we have resources to produce. Now, what is the goal of business and enterprises? Why do we have enterprises? Because people want to employ people? No. Because people want to pay taxes? No. Because people like the space and say, oh, I love Nigeria, I want to produce? No, that's not what economics taught. The main reason why people start businesses is because of profit. In economics, we call it pie. If organizations understand that people's purchasing power has been eroded, and they cannot buy, which is the demand, before you now find the difference between what is sold and the cost of production and look for profits. If that has been eroded, what you see is that people will leave. That is what you are saying. And by the way, it's not just foreign businesses that are leaving Nigeria. Some private businesses are also closing their shop. It's just that they have nowhere to go. So here is it. How do we build an environment that is supportive of business? And this is not just an argument that we should throw to the government of the day. It just happened that it is today we're having the conversation.
So just so we understand this, the idea that they are closing in the first place is a problem.
It is a problem.
Okay. And closing these businesses, whether they're foreign or local, doesn't mean that we're going to suddenly start growing ours.
No, because where is your resources?
Because the same thing that closed those ones will suffocate these ones.
Of course, banks are lending at over 28-30%. Who does that? Go to Europe. Who does that? Go to Middle East, the UAE. Interest rate is less than 5%. Go to Europe, less than 5%. They come to Nigeria, we devalue, the money they bring suddenly swells. Like Ijebu Gari, it swells. So how do you grow in an economy where the exchange rate is so volatile? That's one. Two, how do you grow in an economy where the banks are charging humongous amount as interest rate? And you cannot blame them, because what is MPR? They cannot be charging lower than MPR. So if you check all the factors, we need a major restructuring for our economy and our financial system. We must restructure this economy. If
How?
you don't restructure
How?
it, I'll tell you. We look at our financial system. We are having high MPR. That has implication on what interest rate will be. That has implication on the kind of people that can borrow. When you raise APR further, what happens to unemployment? Unemployment will increase, because central bank says my goal, my vision is to combat inflation. I agree. But in combating inflation, are you creating more unemployed individual? Because private sector cannot now borrow at higher interest rate. Bank will write letters to their customers, sorry, this is the new rate. How will they do business in that kind of environment? So the environment for business is becoming more toxic. And in a toxic environment, how do you expect businesses to make profits? If profits cannot be realized, how will people do business? So you go back to what is the essence of starting business?
Profit.
It is not because people want to be charitable. It is because people want to make profit. So they look for an environment where they can make profit. And I can tell you, a place where we should make most of the profit should be Nigeria. If we can organize ourselves, if we can be sincere with ourselves, if government can focus on what they should focus on and what they cannot manage, allow private sector to partner with them in providing infrastructure in some regards, and also become objective. We should ask ourselves, this is 2024. What will Nigeria be by 2029, 5 years from now? Do you know? Are you sure? Is the future very clear? If it's not clear, it should worry all of us. Are we still going to continue in the same pattern? If we are not going to continue the same pattern, then we have to start doing something today regarding our economic environment.
I don't know if that's going to happen anytime soon.
But what comes to your mind?
The political will to be able to face this very squarely. You noted some of that. We have seen a few economic policies that has helped us in one way or the other. But then the hardship is incremental. it never gets better.
Yeah, because
there's nothing that can be done. You're not growing and being able to handle the problems. So what's happening is that there's a decline in the economy, and then you're going down faster.
No, so
so your quality of life
is getting lower
and lower.
More than half of Nigerians have lower quality of life.
So what happens? What happens at the end of this year? I don't even want to go 5 years from now. What happens at the end of 2024? Will I be able to park my car on the streets? Will Nigerians suddenly get to a point where you can't have... It's there. It's happening already. You can't cook a pot of soup and leave it outside. Somebody will steal it.
Why would you want to do that?
Well, you can...
Why do you want to do that?
When you put the food down, you go inside. By the time you come out, it's gone. We're already there. We're already at this level now. What kind of people, what kind of society are we going to have at the end of 2024 with everything that I'm hearing you say?
It depends on the people we become. 1945, end of the World War, Europe was worse than Nigeria. To be a woman, you need to willingly give yourself to terrorists on the streets of Europe. The same Europe everybody wants to go to. What did they do within 20 years? Europe became the bride of many other countries. It became where people want to go to. They prioritize and they follow what they call the Marshall Plan. Where is our home plan? What are we discussing in Nigeria? What is taking our priorities? What are we listening to? Where is our vision? Where is our future? If I asked the other time, when Nigeria is mentioned, what comes to people's mind? Our growth or development or otherwise. So as a nation, we need to get to a point. All tribes, all tongues, all religion, do we truly want to grow? Do we truly want to develop? Do we truly want to become a country that is most desirable to live in on the face of the earth? That was a point Europe got to. And I'm telling you, a zone or a region that was war-torn. World War. After World War, Europe was a shadow of itself. Carrying weapon was ubiquitous. There was literally no presence of security agencies anymore because of war. But that same country, and you look at their wealth and you look at Africa, they now became people that are coming to support Africa. What did they do differently? Sincerity of purpose. There was insecurity, just as we have. There was hunger, even more than our hunger. What did they do differently? Today, when they mention Europe, what comes to mind? Infrastructure. But why is it different? Why is it different? We have purposeful leadership there too. We have infrastructure there. We have education there. We have legions of Africans, especially Nigerians, applying to go to Europe. What is happening to great institution of learning in Nigeria? Universities going on 8-month strike. How would we avert that in this budget? Such that ASU, NASU, and NAT will not go on strike, including ASU. They will soon realize by the end of this year that money they are paid is not longer enough. Because on what are we benchmarking professors' pay? We said we are going to increase their salary. They said, oh, we are now earning about $400 as professor. Professor, $400, $500. By the time the reality of devaluation eats them, will it not reduce to $300, $200? And when you look at the money, in Naira terms, it looks big. But in global terms, the dollar terms, it looks small. Let me also say
even when it comes to the purchasing power,
it disappears.
That you're holding $1 million doesn't mean it can't finish on two things.
Now, we said education is key to human development. It's one of the things government voted more money to. But education requires training, a tutor and a learner. When the mind of the tutor is not together, and he looks around the world, he feels he would have done better. Do you think we will retain them or we will repeal them? The same with our doctors. I saw in last dispensation how a country sent their representative to come and recruit Nigerian doctors. And many of our doctors, especially our nurses, were taken away from our soil, trained with cheap money from UI, OAU, ABU, UNILAG, Uniport, best universities, good universities in Nigeria, to go and provide service for other people. People felt no problem. It is not brain drain. It is brain circulation. They will send the money. No, the argument is that they will send the money back home. I told them last year, I said, wait till 2023. That was 2022. 2023, what happened to exchange rate? 2024, what happened to exchange rate? I said the money will devalue because not all the monies will get to us. They will first want to take care of themselves, bring their family Because no investor, I beg your pardon, want to go to a country where the perception and what is discussed about the country is highest level of insecurity. And let me say this, go to Tanzania. Tanzania has Zanzibar. Europeans are going to Zanzibar in their large numbers. The reason is because Zanzibar is not as developed as Nigeria. We have to be fair on Nigeria. But Zanzibar is earning more in terms of tourism than Nigeria. Why? Because it is safe. There are no reports of kidnapping. There are no reports of beheading. There are no reports of burning religious houses. There are no reports of religious disparity. Zanzibar is predominantly Muslim. The other part, Dar es Salaam, is predominantly Christian. They never say we are Christian, we are Muslim, we need to fight. A woman is even the leader of the country, so it's not about the gender. It is the quality of the mind of the person leading. Leadership is not about gender. It's about the quality of mind that the leader must discuss with us that in the next 10 years, this is where I'm taking the country to.
This leader
such
we
that
have,
poverty, hunger, and deprivation will be kicked out.
The leader that we have, does he have, I want to be able to say the mind, because you mentioned mind. This leader that we have, is he the one? Does he have that quality of purpose to unite the Nigerian people towards a common goal?
Well, I would say President Tinubu has the opportunity to do that.
He has the opportunity to
do that. Now, opportunity is not what...
He has the capacity as well, no?
He has, he has the opportunity to do that.
Okay.
But opportunity is not sufficient in the economies. What is sufficient is advantage. Taking that opportunity. Will he take the opportunity? Now, we have seen all manner of different political parties in his cabinet, which is a good signal. Oh, he has brought people from different areas. But will you convert that into what will bring the people to prosperity? Will you convert that into looking at our constitution and solve some economic challenges that constitution has meted on the people? Because there are critical issues.
So far, between when he came into office and now, this is his very first budget.
Yes.
Between when he came into office and with this budget right now, is there some indication that we're being steered in the right direction, in the direction of from an economic,
I would say
from the standpoint
of an
economist?
Well, this is his first budget, and this is the first month. We can't say much about his first budget and his first month until we have seen the pattern of the budget. And I've said that there is so little money to spend, perhaps to play the devil's advocate. That is why we have this meager. People will say this is a large amount of budget. And I say to you that this is a very small amount of budget. There are institutions around the world, 2-3 universities in the US or in some parts of the world. This is lower than what is spent on research. Universities. It's far lower than what is spent on research. Even some tech companies. Nigeria depends on oil. You could see the parameter here is oil. But when you look at phones that are sold in Nigeria, not made in Nigeria, I don't want to mention brand because I'm not sure if they will pay for hard, which is cool business, by the way. Now, when you look at what they spend, an iPhone 15, equivalent of 2 million naira, convert that to dollar on 800 naira government rate. If you convert to 800 naira government rate, you see the amount it becomes. So how many barrels of crude oil is that? Why we have fixated on barrel of crude oil, that we will not get everything. That some international organization will extract on our behalf and tell us what they extract, because we really don't know the quantity. Imagine if you have supported manufacturing, if you have supported ICT, if you have supported development, if you have supported things that will make people grow, that is more predictable, then you are going to see why countries like UAE is paying less attention to crude, that is still taking significant space in our own national budget. We have gold. We have other natural resources that we strike on. And we have one of the president's finest minister managing that ministry. How much will that add to this budget so that our revenue can grow sincerely? How much are we going to add? We have Sector National Bureau of Statistics saying it's growing in leaps and bounds. How do we make such revenue that will go to government to have direct impact on this budget? One reason that I have, one concern that I have, hunger must disappear from this land. Poverty must disappear from this land. And penury must also disappear from this land.
With this budget, you just told me no, it will not happen this year. It will disappear, but not this year.
Well, maybe before our lifetime, maybe before the end of President Tinubu's administration. This is his first budget. So it will be really tough for me to say, is the man or is not the man? Because for you to be the man, we will look at what is happening to exchange rates. Will it be improving or will it be decreasing? What is happening to inflation? The target is 6 to 9%. Currently, we are on 28%. We need to go back to single digits. What is happening to unemployment? 40 hours a week. What is happening to unemployment? We need single digits. Worst case, 20 hours a week. Now, we are over 30. We need to go back to single digits. And most importantly, what is happening to growth? We need to grow not less than 7%.
What about revenue? Do you think we're going to get that this year?
Yeah, well, I'm not sure.
Targets,
I'm not sure that we're going to do up to what we wrote on paper. I believe that we should do about 12 trillion. And if you do 12 trillion, I think we should give standing ovation to authorities.
To 12 trillion?
From 5. From 5
yes,
trillion.
Because I was just going to tell you that, that the target that President Buhari at the time set, he didn't meet it.
No, never met.
It was 5.
He never.
In
the 8 years.
It was supposed to be
met.
about 8 or 9 trillion.
Never met.
So, but our target now is 12.
No. The target now is even beyond 12. I am saying
if we make 12.
If we make 12 or to 15, I think we need to give standing ovation. We need to clap. But I doubt, that we will go beyond 12 to 15. Because if you are saying that the total budget is 28.7 trillion and that we are looking at debt at 8 trillion, remove 8 trillion from 2028 or 27 at 28 trillion. What does that mean? What does that mean? It's obvious that we need to generate 18 to 19 trillion in the economy that just generated 5 trillion.
I have been tightening my belt.
So
the government said we should tighten our belt.
No,
I don't have any more holes.
No, just look for something to punch. You create extra.
I have to create extra holes
so that you can reduce.
What should the Nigerian be?
Well, I've said.
What should Nigerian be getting ready for in 2024 as they were in January? And we're still trying to deal with the 365 days of January.
Personal economy.
How should they be positioning themselves? What adjustments should we be making in our lifestyle?
Well, it's tough because we've been adjusting. But what I would tell many people that are working, let me start with them, is that 9 to 5 is no longer nice. What is fine is 5 to 9. That is, if you have one job, it will no longer be sufficient for you, Oni. You have to look for another job. You might need to reduce hours of sleep. You might need to learn new skills. You might need to do something online to earn more income for you. If you rely on one income, it will not be sufficient. The way I'm talking to government to find alternative revenue sources, I'm also speaking with citizens to find alternative revenue sources. Businesses as well. Businesses will look beyond their single revenue windows. Because whether you do business or not, well, your competitors are out there who are innovating and looking for new things. There is no perfection in anything. That is why different phone companies are bringing they are bringing difference from what they have done in the previous years. So how do you look for a non-perfect product and bring innovation out of it, vote more into your research, and try to sell more? Try to sell more. Because it's a tough time, and tough time, they say, don't last. But for you to last, you need to be alive. So we need to put all our energy in a survival mode. While we believe that our government means well for us, I am very hopeful that things will be fine. But that Nigeria will get to the place where many of us want the country to be. Through big, we compete with the rest of the world, Europe of this world, the Middle East of this world, and Asia of this world, I doubt. With this budget, no. We need to attract foreign direct investment and local investment and put them not just in our shares or stocks, no. We need to put them in critical sector, education, health, infrastructure, electricity. That is where we need to put them. Because in 2022, a dozen of time, national grid collapsed. 2023, between 3 to 5 times, national grid collapsed. 2024, are we going to see an end to it? Because if we don't, how will investors come to a country that the power in terms of quantity is not available? In terms of quality, it's also spoiling equipment. Power comes suddenly and is taken abruptly. It's spoiling equipment. It's costing organization more. So they have to go back and rely on 1,250 diesel.
Do you think
how do they compete with the rest of the world?
Do you think more young people are going to Japa this year?
Well, it's obvious that more
because
young
I know
people,
a lot of them are listening to you right now.
Yes,
they're thinking,
It is obvious that more young people may want to leave the country. But so that IPP and government should see opportunity in this. A country called Philippines is preparing their citizens that also want to go because of the economic crisis. What job? How can they compete with Americans in terms of science and technology? Maybe no. But clerical staff is what most of these people are needed for in some countries. So they position their citizens and created special training program for them as a country, so that when they go abroad, I tell you, the best of the best front desk and clerical staff are from Philippines. They are affordable, they are better, but what is Nigeria known for? We have a lot of our youth in ICT space. I understand. People may say we have Yahoo Yahoo. See, let's do the math. I condemn it. I've spoken in several universities, speaking with young people. I've spoken at NYSC, speaking with young people all over the country, discouraging them because it is crime. But at the same time, I have 95% of young Nigerians that are genuine. 95% of Nigerian young people
in that
are serious
space.
In the same ICT space, and they are not corrupt, they are not thieves, they believe in their country. But do I want them to go away? No. If they must go, government must ensure rather, that when they get abroad, they are competitive. When they get abroad, they are respected. Our passport is respected. And that when they get abroad, they will not say because you are African or Nigeria, we are going to pay you only $2,000. And because you are from other nationality, that is not Nigeria, we are going to pay you $10,000. The gap, if you go abroad, which I believe you do, the gap for labor coming from Nigeria is too much. I'm not reporting to you, I'm telling you what is happening. So because our people are very skillful, and they are also very competitive, people think we are aggressive. No, we are competitive. That is our nature. So we need to get to a point where we protect them from home and face the reality. That is when they will know that Nigeria is contributing to their growth even when they are abroad. And you cannot have remittance going into housing. That's a federal housing fund we are trying to create, and a national house development fund we are trying to create. They will know that, okay, I received some support from Nigeria. Maybe I'm going to do that as consulate. Maybe I'm going to do that at our embassy all around Nigeria. And ICT, I'm just using that as an example. People developing apps and so on and so forth, which the rest of the world wants. But because our currency is weak, and that we can do that with the skills that we have in Nigeria, and our people can become better for it.
Well, we do have to leave it there. I know that we can talk about Nigeria for hours and hours, but I want to thank you very much, Mr. Paul Alaje.
Thank you so much.
For making out the time to be with us on Political Paradigm. I know you have a lot ahead of you this year, and I hope you enjoy every single bit of the year.
Amen. Thank you so much for having me.
That's all the time we have for Political Paradigm. And we have been speaking with Mr. Paul Alaje and, of course, listening to all it is that he has for us. And of course, this discussion about the breakdown of this budget and what this budget means to the people. I would really love for every single one of you to join the conversation online. Watch the past episodes of the program on YouTube, channelstv.com, and keep pushing till the accountability question is answered. I am Kayla Megwa. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.